Good day, good evening, my dear friends. Right, I've been just having a little scoot round the Facebook guitar sites. I always like to see what's going on. And there's a big debate going on. I've never seen it before about whether it's right or wrong to use a guitar capo. Some people say it's cheating, Other people say you can't play things without them, Well, there were there's two arguments, I'm not just sitting on the fence. There are times when I would definitely not use one, and there are times when I definitely would. And this particular video I'm going to demonstrate the two areas, okay? Because it's funny, some people get really heated over it. They go, it's sacrilege to use a guitar capo. Usually classical players and jazz players, let's be honest, because the purists out there, and there's nothing wrong with being a purist if you love that style of music. And I'm going to demonstrate why they say that, hopefully. And then I'm going to demonstrate why, it can be dismissed as being daft because there's certain things you can't play with that one. Right, before I go any further, thank you to all those people who are on my Patreon platform who bring all this free content to you, and for all those people who donate to the channel by doing the thanks button, buy me a cup of tea, which is cool because I drink a lot of it. Everything I'm going to demonstrate today, there are links below if you want to learn the songs that I'm going to show you. I'm going to use bits and fragments, but the full videos for all the different tutorials are there. Okay, so we've got that out of the way. Before we go any further, I want you to cast your mind back, for those who may remember. I did a lesson called the caged system. All right, now people wonder what the hell that is. Caged system sounds like some weird thing, I won't go into detail. You got to be careful what you say these days, haven't you? But the word cage, something weird sprang to mind in my weird adult head. Anyway, all it refers to are the main shapes that you play on a guitar. C, the open shapes, A, G, E, and D, all right? And why is that important? Well, this is the thing, you see. A lot of people don't really know how classical guitar works. Now, forgive me to all those people out there that do know how it works, but a lot of people are beginners. They haven't really got a clue what's going on. They just see somebody doing this and playing all this beautiful stuff. But really what's going on, and this relates directly to the capo, so please bear with me. They're chasing a melody around the neck when you play classical guitar. When you're playing with a guitar capo, you tend to sing with that. Your voice provides the melody, all right? Which means that you can just be pretty static on the guitar, all right? So for example, if I was in the Shadows and I was Bruce Welch, the guitar player, I would do, if I was going to play one of their hits, I won't tell you what it is yet, you'll guess. Basic, simple shapes, right? And while that's going on, Hank is playing this. Now you've got an idea, now the melody's there. But if we wanted to put those two things together, the melody, as you can see, is here, and yet the guitar, the chords that Bruce Welch should play or whatever, they're down here. You think, well, I can't do that, it's impossible. Well, you can, but you've got to use different inversions of the chords. And you have to then chase the melody around. That's all it is, really. You're playing the melody notes, okay, the tune, and whilst playing the tune, you have to find the chord that's nearest to that melody note and play it without cocking up, all right? And that's why classical guitar is so difficult, all right? It's a different level of playing, all right? So say, for example, we were going to play that one I've just referred to, Cavatina. The opening chord with, where are we? Now, that chord is the chord E. And you'll look at it and say, well, that doesn't look like an E to me, Mr. Fenner. And I'll say, well, it is. There's the melody note. It's our tune that Hank would play. And the rest of this is based on this shape here. And you may now start to recognize that little shape as C, which is what it is. But when it's played here, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E. When it's played at this position, it becomes E. And we have to put a bar on, you know, in order to play it, to look after all the open strings. All right, do you get the idea? So what we've done here, just to recap, the melody notes there, we needed the chord E. We couldn't use that one that we all know when we first start playing because it's miles away and we haven't got fingers that are 3 foot long. So we have to find another way of playing it. And this is where the caged system comes in. We're using the chord C, or the shape C, in order to play the chord E, all right? Because we've moved it and we're able to now to play the melody note. The second chord in cavatina, the melody note stays the same, but the chord changes. And we use this shape. Well, I've got this down here. This is another way of playing a G sharp minor. Now, we'd normally play it there, you know, when you first start playing. So what the hell is this? What's going on here? Well, that, if you look at that shape, what does it remind you of? It's a D minor shape, isn't it? From down here. But we're going to play it. Where are we? I get lost if I don't start from the top. So we're going to play it at the 7th fret with the bar at the 6th. So we're using this shape to play the chord, so in order that we can continue playing the melody, because of course we can't do that and play the same note. Similarly with the next chord, that's an F sharp minor. So we're playing it, that's based on an A minor shape. See what I mean? The next chord we're going to play in cavatina, it's worth doing this one. This is a grade 8 piece of music, by the way. What's that look like? It's a D, isn't it? Oh, it's a D shape. But moved up there, it isn't. It's, what is it? It's an A, I think. I can't remember. I'll have to look it up. But, you know, it's a G. No, it's not. It's an A. Then we've got a B, because it's based on the E shape. Don't forget, all these chords I'm playing are all based on simple shapes. Then we've got a major 7th. I'll play that again. E major 7th. What's that look like? D 7th. A major 7th. What does that look like? It's a C major. It's a C major 7th shape that you normally play there, but we've had to move it up, so it's now a D major 7th. You know, so that's the idea. E, G sharp minor, F sharp minor, A, B, E major 7th, E 7th, A major 7th, D major 7th, G major 7th, C major 7th, F sharp minor, B 7th, E sus4, back to E. So that, briefly, I'm trying to demonstrate that the cage system, using the shapes C, A, G, E, and D, they're all movable. All right, but they're difficult to do. If you had to play, say I wanted to play the chord A and I only knew the chord shape G, like that. Or say I was singing a song, and this is where the capo comes in. Say I was singing a song and it was in the key of G. Well, it starts with G. And I thought, it's a bit low that for me. And I'll say, what's the only shape I know? I say, well, I need it to be an A. And you'll say, well, I only know the chord G. You could say, well, okay, G, our root note is here. It's very important we know where our root note is. It's there. If I wanted it to be an A, I would go G, I'd move the shape up to G sharp, and then A. Problem is, I've got all these open strings left, haven't I? So I can either do this, which is pretty bloody hard, okay? I'll bet money on people not being able to play that when they first kick off. In fact, nobody ever uses it. They tend to abbreviate it and do, easy bits. Classical player would use fragments of it, because of course when you're playing classical guitar, you're never strumming usually all of it at once. You're picking little notes out, and you tend to build the chord as you go along. But if you knew the chord, it was the song in G, and you wanted it in A, you could say, well, I'm not going to bother with trying to do that. I'll get one of these things called a capo. And as long as you're not scooting around a neck playing all sorts of, melody stuff, and you haven't got to go to your left, that's important. Because if you have, then you're buggered. You start here, and there's you're in the key of A now. And you'll say, well, that's a G shape. I know, but it was when it lived there. It's only a shape. When it lives there, it's G. When you move it up, it becomes something else. So let's have a quick look at the cage system in a bit more detail. Cage, C. If I'm playing C, it lives there. Where's the root note? If I wanted to play C sharp, I would move it up to there. Unfortunately, I can't just do that because I've got to look after open strings. So a classical player would do that. A folk guitarist would say, forget about that, I'm going to use a capo. And he would put his capo there, and he'd just play the C shape as normal. If I wanted it to be in the key of D, and we were using the C shape, I would do it there. Okay, and that's for example, D is a really popular one, because D, as you know, is a 4-string chord. It's quite limiting really what to do. You can't use the 6th string, and the A string is an alternative bass note. Excuse me, some people detune this note to a D, but it's quite restrictive. So what people do, they'll say, well, I want to play a song in D, so they would say, well, let's use the capo, for example. Do it like that. Lots of things you can do with the capo. Say we were going to play a song, what else can we do? Say we were going to do a song, you've heard me do this before, Jolene, for example, by Dolly Parton. Now that is in C sharp minor, okay? So what do you think? Well, I can't do the riff and do all the other bits, because I've got to play the G and I've got to play the D. So this is going to be restrictive. If I have to do that, it means that I'm going to limit what I can do with the other 3 fingers. I need this finger to do stuff with. So how do I get to C sharp minor? Okay, well, what she does, or the guitarist that played it, took his A minor shape, A minor, A sharp minor, B minor, C minor, C sharp minor. We need to get rid of this finger because we want to play stuff with it. So we put that there. And now I've got a nice... Okay. Big Love. That's exactly the same key that Lindsey Buckingham did when he did that. Now he wouldn't have been able to play all that fiddly stuff if he was trying to be a purist and didn't have a capo on. All right, you need the capo. It's very important. Let's look at something else. When Paul Simon wrote the beautiful song, what's the one, Scarborough Fair, for example. I think he wrote the music. He didn't write the lyrics. Traditional, apparently. It's in the key of E minor. All right, but when you listen to it, it's beautifully pretty and it's all high and sparkly. Now what he's doing. It's great, isn't it? Etc. I'm not going to do too much in case I get a copyright thing. But that was in the key of E minor. Why is it E minor? You're not playing an E minor. E minor's there, Mr. Fenner. Well, let's have a look. He's playing variations of the A minor shape here. We'll know that's the A minor shape. However, it's only A minor when it lives down there. Let me demonstrate. A minor is there. There's a cage system lesson, by the way, which the link is below. I'm doing this, I'm racing through it a bit so you don't get bored, all right? So look for the link below. Everything I'm talking about is links below, full lessons, okay? So we've got A minor, A sharp minor, B minor, C minor, C sharp minor, D minor, D sharp minor, E minor. cage system. And you get loads of pretty sounds when you do that. I mean, George Harrison wrote the song Here Comes the Sun. He wrote it in the key of A. And I remember as a kid, I've recounted this story to you many times. You know, I went to Frank Hessey's well-known music shop in Liverpool, bought this, spent all my pocket money on this book called The Beatles Complete, and all these wonderful photographs in it, pictures, all that stuff. Got the thing home. Yeah, and it said, right, it's in A, D, and E. I knew those chords. I'd learned them. A, D, yeah, E, I know them. I'm going to sing it. I started to play it, and I thought, well, it's all low. What about all the pretty high stuff that's going on? And I took this book back to the shop and I said, hey mate, this is nothing. This isn't right. It says it's in A. I'm playing A. It sounds nothing like A. And he goes, well, you need a capo. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what a capo. I thought it was one of these you put on your head up. All right. So the gentleman, Jim Goretti, it was. People in Liverpool, famous man, used to work in Frank Hessey's music shop. Beatles bought their guitars from this fella. He explained, he said, well, no, what you do is, it's in A, but do you know the chord D? And I looked in with a little bit of disdain. I said, well, yes. First chord I ever learned to play, whatever it was. And he explained, he said, well, Leo, it's D, D sharp, E, F sharp, G, G sharp, A. And he went on to explain how when you move it up, it's a shape. We know the shape is D, but when you play it in a different position, it becomes something else. In this instance, D. And then he said, but the problem is you've got all these open strings there, my friend. You need to put a capo on to take the place of the nut. And then he put this capo on. It wasn't as flash as this, by the way. He put it on like that, and he played the D shape, and he said, now you're in the key of A. I said, well, what about the other chords? He said, well, if you play the G shape, that is now the chord D. And I said, how can it be? And I still hadn't sunk in. He said, well, you're using the G shape, but it's, and he went on again. He went G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, and finally D. So you've got A, D, and then he did the same thing with the E7th, but he explained about the, let's do it again. A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, E7, and that's what it is about. That's the cage system. And then he went on to demonstrate. He went. And so on. And he played this beautifully. And, and from then on in, I thought, well, capos are really, really useful. Now, classical players will never, ever use a capo. Okay, let's just recap. The reason they would never use a capo is because they're running up and down the neck. These guys know what they're doing. These are real, and girls. Some of the best players, by the way, are females. My favourite classical players are women, I can't understand how they can press those bloody shapes down, you know what I mean? But they do, and they're absolutely stunning. Let's have another example. John Lennon, I'm using the Beatles because most of you know who they are, wrote the song Norwegian Wood in the key of E. In a slightly more in tune guitar than mine. So he wrote it in the key of E, but he couldn't do that riff that he does with it. So he said, well, if I put the capo on at the fret 2, like this, and play the D shape, let's go over it again, think of Mr. Goretti, D, D sharp, E, and then, and so on. And he, but he's not cheating, is he? That's just the way it is, People who write songs and use the capo to their advantage, it's not cheating, it's just a different style of playing. Everybody has a different style of playing. There's different genres of music, and it's really important. Let's have a look at what else. Have we got anything else here? I mean, you could say, is open tuning cheating? You might as well say, because what you do with open tuning, of course, you detune your guitar to to one chord. So when you hit all the strings open, it plays a chord, might be D, might be G, and then that allows you to use 4 fingers to do all the stuff with. You're not having got to worry about playing a chord and then try and play the tune. You know, is that cheating? So to conclude, I think what you all need to do is go and have a look at the cage system lesson, which you'll find on the link below. Those people that want to learn Here Comes the Sun or Cavatina or the other one, whatever it is I've demonstrated, I'll put the links below so you can have a look at them as well. Look for the cage system one, it's very important. As far as the capo is concerned, the argument, both are correct. You know, you never use a capo when playing classical music, or I've not seen a classical player using it. Maybe they'll do it if they want to hold a couple of strings and, you know, and some of the great modern players, some beautiful young players use a capo in a really unusual ways, which is fantastic. So you know, just have a look at what we've got at the links below, and carry on the debate. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think. You know, what do you think? Are you one of the purists that would never use one? And if you are, I'd say, well, can you please demonstrate how to play Here Comes the Sun without one? I would love to see it. All right. So unless you do a classical arrangement of it, of course, which is possible, you can do things like that. I'm not going to demonstrate it now. I'll do that in another lesson. Right. So there we are. You know, is it cheating to use a capo? You tell me. I don't think it is. You know, but you never use it on a couple of styles. Jazz. The jazzers wouldn't go near a capo. You know, in fact, I reckon that it's the jazzers that are doing all the moaning, because they're running up and down the neck, and they're right what they're saying. You know, when you're buzzing about all the time, you can't move your capo every 5 minutes. But of course, a jazz player would never be, wouldn't have any inclination of playing Here Comes the Sun or those things. You know, they'd be drinking Guinness somewhere quiet with 4 people watching them. I'm only kidding. Right, I'll see you next time. Take care.